When Anya moved to the city, she didn't know the building had one rule. Never open the door of room 404. Her new home was room 403, a small but cozy space on the 4th floor. The rain was drumming a lonely rhythm against her window that first night, a fitting soundtrack to her new, solitary life. She unpacked a few boxes, feeling the exhaustion of the move finally settle in. Just as she was about to fall asleep, she heard it, a faint scratching noise. It seemed to come from the wall she shared with the adjacent room, room 404. At first, it was quiet, almost like a mouse. But it grew louder, scra, scra. It was a dry, insistent sound, like nails dragging slowly across old wood. Anya tried to ignore it, pulling the pillow over her head, but the sound was persistent, grating on her nerves. Finally, she'd had enough. She sat up and banged her fist against the wall. "Hello, can you please stop that? Some people are trying to sleep." The scratching stopped instantly. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Anya sighed in relief and lay back down. Then knock, knock, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. But they didn't come from the wall. They came from the hallway, from the door of room 404. Anya froze. She crept to her peephole and looked out. The hallway was dimly lit, the lights flickering erratically. She could see the door to room 404. It was old, the paint peeling, the number 404 barely legible. It looked like it hadn't been opened in years, with a heavy, dusty padlock securing it shut. So who had knocked? The next morning, sunlight streamed into her apartment, chasing away the shadows of the night. Anya convinced herself it was just her imagination, the stress of the move playing tricks on her. As she went to get the morning paper, she saw a piece of folded paper slid under her door. She picked it up. Unfolding it, she saw a message scrawled in what looked like red ink. "Don't knock again." The handwriting was jagged, angry. It definitely wasn't hers. A shiver ran down her spine. Later that day, she ran into the landlord, a tired-looking man named Mr. Henderson, in the lobby. She decided to ask him about the noise and the strange note. "Mr. Henderson," she began, trying to sound casual, "I was just wondering about the person in room 404. They were making a bit of noise last night." Mr. Henderson's friendly demeanor vanished. His face went pale, his eyes darting around nervously. He lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. "There is no room for 104. The 4th floor only goes up to 403. Don't ask about it again." He turned and walked away quickly, leaving Anya standing there, utterly bewildered. But she had seen it. She had seen the door. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old building made her jump. Around midnight, it started again. Not scratching this time, but a sound far more chilling. It was the sound of a child crying, muffled and faint, coming from behind the wall, from room 404. The sobs were heartbreaking, filled with despair. "Help me, please. I'm so cold." A small voice whimpered. Anya's fear was momentarily replaced by a wave of concern. A child was in trouble. She rushed to the wall, pressing her ear against it. "Hello, are you okay in there? What's your name? I'll call for help." The crying stopped instantly. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. Then a different voice, a whisper that seemed to crawl through the wall and into her ear, slithered into the quiet. "Don't open the door." Just as the last word was spoken, all the lights in the hallway outside her apartment blinked and went out, plunging everything into complete darkness. The hours crawled by. Aanya sat on her bed, wide awake, staring at her door. The digital clock on her nightstand glowed with an eerie red light. 3:33 a.m. Just then, she heard it. A soft whisper, like wind through dead leaves, coming from the hallway. Aanya ... It was her name. It sounded like it was right outside her door. Against her better judgment, her feet carried her to the peephole. The hallway was still dark, but a strange, faint light was seeping from under the door of room 404, and the door itself, the heavy padlock, was gone. The door was cracked open, just a sliver. A thick, cold fog was spilling out from the opening, swirling around the floor. Curiosity warred with her terror. "Who's there?" She called out, her voice trembling. There was no reply. Taking a deep breath, she slowly opened her own door and stepped into the hallway. The air was unnaturally cold. As she neared room 404, she peered into the dark opening. It wasn't a room inside. It was just darkness, an absolute void that seemed to swallow the light. Just as she leaned in, a freezing cold hand shot out from the darkness and grabbed her ankle. She screamed, a raw, terrified sound, and kicked wildly, breaking free from the grip. She scrambled back into her apartment, slamming and locking the door behind her. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. She leaned against the door, gasping for breath. The lights in her room started to flicker violently, just like they had in the hall. The room flashed between light and dark. In one of those flashes, she caught a glimpse of something in the bathroom mirror. Her blood ran cold. Standing right behind her reflection was a girl. She was pale, almost translucent, with long dark hair and eyes that were just black pits of sorrow. When the light flickered back on, the girl spoke, her voice a fragile echo. "You shouldn't have listened. Now he knows you're here." Aanya spun around, but there was no one there. She was alone in the room. She looked back at the mirror. The girl was still there, her reflection unmoving. Who? Aanya stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Who knows I'm here?" The pale girl's expression was one of immense sadness. "The one in room 404. He collects the people who knock. He collects the people who listen." Aanya turned around again, her mind reeling. When she looked back at the mirror, the girl was gone. Panic set in. She had to get out. She had to run. Aanya grabbed her phone and her keys, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold them. She was about to dial 911 when her phone vibrated in her hand. A new text message had arrived. The sender was an unknown number. Her finger trembled as she opened it. The message contained only 7 words, all in capital letters. Thank you for unlocking the door. She dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the screen cracking. At that exact moment, she heard a sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps, dragging themselves across the floor. They were coming closer, closer, until they stopped right outside her door. Room 403. The silence that followed was absolute. Aanya held her breath, listening. Every nerve in her body screamed. She backed away from the door, pressing herself into the far corner of the room, making herself as small as possible. "Please go away," she whispered to the empty air. Then, knock, knock, K-N-O-C-K. 3 loud, booming knocks that shook the entire door in its frame. They were not the knocks of a child. They were heavy, powerful. Final. Aanya squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. A voice answered from the other side, a deep, guttural voice that didn't sound human. It was a voice that seemed to resonate from the very foundations of the building. "Aanya, room 404 is ready for you." The lights in her apartment shut off one last time, plunging her into total, suffocating blackness. And in the dark, she heard the sound of her doorknob, slowly, deliberately beginning to turn. In this building, once 404 calls your name, the room stays empty no longer.